We have reemerged, ladies and gentlemen. The Thanksgiving food coma really had us in it for a while. I know I was feeling very, very well fed after the days after Thanksgiving. It was a good time for the holiday. But we are back. Of course, several weeks have come by for us to talk about, and we have plenty to talk about here on this edition of the Sports Agents Podcast, your favorite NFL podcast that has been discussing football for several years now. Several years now. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, we are in the top 1% of podcasts, because most podcasts would have given up by now. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, of course, beginning the affair, as always, my soliloquy, the Iceman himself, Jared. And joining me on this edition, not our usual troublesome triumvirate, but in this time, it'll be the dynamic duo of danger. Should be our tagline going forward when it's just the two of us. But joining me is our games master, Justin. Justin, how are we doing on this fine Saturday?
It's goodbye. Good. It's good to be back. It's it's been a little while.
Indeed it has. And it's going to be quite the episode for us to catch up on. So as the title is, the highlights of this bizarre world NFL season, because I will say, it's been a weird season. It has been a weird one for us, whether it comes to like our pick challenge, which we'll get to that here in a couple brief moments, with us making selections and picks and us having to really string the brains together to try to make the best selections possible on a week-by-week basis, or just the actual play itself on the field. The upsets we've gotten, more shutouts this season than we got the year prior in the NFL. Funny enough, like there was only one or two last year, and then this year we've already doubled that to like at least 4. So it's been quite the year. Upsets from low-tier teams surprising us with the season. There's been a lot. So we have decided to break it down as best we can. We have main talking points from each conference that we're going to predominantly discuss in this episode as kind of the highlights of what this Bizarro season has been. Teams overperforming, underperforming, and of course, in those conversations, we will be sure to talk about players. We'll be talking about players in depth over the course of these combos as well. So that being said, we're going to get into it in a couple of moments. But first, since of course there's only 2 of us, that means the Podfather is unable to join us this week. Sadly, he is off doing things. He is secretly, he's preparing for the. As of now, we're expecting it to come the Christmas rant for this year in 2025. How he finds the time for this stuff, we just don't get it, Justin.
He doesn't show up to work, so I'm here. That's how he finds the time.
He's using that Christmas holiday time off to get himself ready for this, but Father, we'll see you next time, assuming our recording schedule is actually aligned. But no. So obviously we made the picks beforehand. Totally didn't make them like half of an hour before we ended up going on air. So with that being said, we're going to start off with the pick challenge and the update for what the standings are, because it's been a couple weeks since the people have seen us, and the picks that we made this week. So per the record keeper himself, the Podfather, so the standings are updated to this point prior to the selection of the picks this week. Justin stands at the top of the table with 104 points. Very much can clinch the championship here in the next, I don't know if you can mathematically clinch it next week, but maybe the week after you'll be able to, is like the earliest you'd be able to clinch it, I think. So week 17, I think our statistician has told me here to the side. I sit in second place in the standings with 92 points. Rough weeks, but you know what? Lando won the World Drivers title. I'm all happy. And I won my F1 Fantasy League. So fun. The Podfather sits in third with 75 points. And the Pod Children / entity are in fourth with 70 points, because what we've had to do the last couple of weeks is that we've just given them the Thursday night game. What the hell is happening out there? They picked an Atlanta 4-point upset, which honestly, I'm not going to lie, Justin, I would have considered, maybe not a 4-point upset, but I would have considered an Atlanta upset had we made the picks prior to Thursday Night Football. But they get the 4 points there. Perfect for them. And the Pod Children, they're trying to make a run here at the Podfather. So we'll see how that ends up going. So basically, with that, and in that order, following selections were made, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, those of you who are relatively new to this, if you are just joining the podcast, how? But welcome. Basically, what we do on a weekly basis is that we go through the schedule of the NFL on any given week, and we make picks of games on a 4-to-1 point basis scale, 4 being the highest, of course, value, but the most confident that we perceive a game to be in our scuffed thoughts, and 1 being the least amount of points that you can get for a right selection. We go in a serpentine draft order based on the standings. So for quite a while now, it's been Podfather first, Justin last, and then he makes his first and second pick. Podfather makes his second and third. I'm stuck in the middle each time with one at a time. Fun times. And we go based off of the lines that are given to us in terms of who's favored and who's an upset goes. We all must make at least one upset selection with at minimum our 2-point pick. And the upsets are given to us by our recent new friends at
ESPN Bet. Did it change over?
Yeah, they changed it over.
Who is it now?
I believe DraftKings, I think.
Okay. DraftKings.
DraftKings. Our third different friend that we've had on in the challenge history, because it was Caesars Sportsbook.
Caesars at first, yeah.
Quite a while. So welcome DraftKings as the unofficial line provider for us, because we just go based on the easiest to look up lines. So with that being said, we do that. So I'm going to summarize for the beautiful people what our selections were this week in the exact order that they were made. So with the Podfather's 4-point selection, drum roll please. No, he selected the Bears with his 4-point pick over the Browns because, and this is him verbatim, Dustin.
Big Adam Rank fan. We know.
Yeah, my good buddy Adam Rank told me to pick the Bears over the Browns, so that's what I'll do. I really would have thought he was going to troll and make an opposite selection, but no, he is backing the Bears, which we will sort of mention the Bears here later in the episode when it comes to one of our talking points here in a bit. My 4-point selection I made was the San Francisco 49ers, a late season bye. They should be refreshed. 3 wins in a row. That's my logic. Justin, with his back-to-back picks, goes with the Bird Boys. There's a lot of bird teams in the NFL, so let me just narrow that down for the people. He went with the Eagles at his 4-point pick and the Seahawks at his 3-point pick. I went with the Texans over the Cardinals. There's another bird team, but I did not pick the Cardinals. I picked the Texans with my 3-point pick. The Podfather went with the Giants at 3 and a mild upset with the Saints over the Panthers at 2, so clearly not a believer like us. I went with a Bengals over Ravens upset. We'll see if they can do that for the second time in as many matchups in just a couple weeks. And with Justin, his 2-point matchups was... You went with a double upset, if I'm not mistaken, Justin. You went with the Chargers over the Chiefs this week, and you went with the Broncos over the Packers this week. Because, funny enough, Green Bay is actually a road favorite going into Mile High. And then with my 1-point pick, I went with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then the Podfather went with the Dallas Cowboys at his 1-point pick. And so the entity, of course, their 4-point pick early in this week used for Falcons over Bucks, so that was an upset pick. They didn't need to make an upset here. They went with the Patriots, which I think ended up being an upset anyway. They went with the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Rams as their 3, 2, and 1 selections. So that was this week's pick challenge. We're wrapped up and summarized for the beautiful people. Of course, next time we get to do the show with all 3 of us, it'll be live, and we'll see what the point standings are at that point. Perhaps we'll get one step closer to the end of the season. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. That was our pick challenge wrap up for this week. But now, Justin, the main portion of the show. And there's many ways we could lead into this, but I think there's one fair way to kind of bring us to these set of topics. And what is this 25 season? So before we get to it, Justin, what is your
bro?
Yeah, what the best way you could describe this? Let's say hypothetically, Justin, someone stumbles upon our podcast here, which once again, welcome. Let's say this is their first season watching NFL football, which to be fair can happen. Of course, there's many people. If this is someone's first season watching football and they're seeing so many people comment about why it's crazy, Justin, give a quick summary of why this 2025 season has been relatively crazy up to this point.
Well, because everything that you thought you knew going into it, realistically, you didn't. You know, everyone thought maybe the Ravens were going to be good. They started off slow. Lamar doesn't look like an MVP. He looks like he's lost a step somehow. The Bengals, we expected to be good, and Joe Burrow got hurt again. But, like, they were so much worse than we expected to be without Joe Burrow. You know, like, nobody expected the Patriots and the Colts to have 9 wins and the Seahawks to have 9 wins, you know, this early in the season. Like, there's just so much that was not expected. And also one of the hardest betting seasons, by the way, I think I've ever experienced in my entire life. Not a big bettor here, but I mean, from people I speak with and, you know, friends and people that I know that do gamble, spread-wise, game-wise, parlay-wise, one of the hardest betting seasons that we've seen as fans in a while. So, like, just everything that you think you know, the NFL is kind of just telling you, you don't know.
Yeah. No. I think that is the most fair way to kind of wrap up and describe this season. Like you said, it's from injuries that have certainly impacted teams and that are continuing to impact teams, as we're going to get to here down the line with our topics that we're going to discuss here with some in-depth analysis and just conversation points in general. Whether it be the injury aspect of things, multiple starting/star quarterbacks have been hurt this season, which have definitely impacted teams. Older players, whether they've started the season and are doing well or coming back here in a little bit, making their return to the league here tomorrow. Fantastic skill position players that really are looking like the best players on their respective organizations. Great defenses not being supported by their offenses, great offenses not being supported by their defenses, multiple coaches fired. I mean, that's probably the most consistent thing of this season. It's just a couple coaches ended up being fired during the course of the year. Rookie QBs coming in and really looking like rookie QBs. A lot of struggling young quarterbacks in the league this season. But just, upsets in some of the most random places you wouldn't have thought of. Like you mentioned, the bevy of like surprise games and performances we can see, and just how much I think this season in particular, attrition, right? Like what we would have said about certain teams at the halfway point and what grades and awards we would have given at the halfway point. It's almost kind of in our favor, Justin. We never got to do a midseason awards because I think nearly all of our selections probably would have been close to wrong at this juncture. As we are getting closer here to the end of the regular season. What happened?
Spread wise, it would have been wrong.
Oh yeah. And probably actual selection wise, if we're being honest. So it's been quite the season, and we have a couple of talking points here that are going to encapsulate what has been a chaotic season and give our takes on it. And one of them, you kind of just mentioned them there, Justin, and it'll be the first one we talk about. If you watched NFL in the early mid 2010s, and if you watched NFL in the mid to late maybe it's more early mid 2000s in this case, but the Patriots and Broncos. We have a specific question to cover with them, but more of the fact that what on earth is happening with these teams? These two teams that drafted rookie QBs in the 2024 NFL draft, both those young QBs in their second season, and both of them having plenty of success. The top two records, not just in the AFC, but in the NFL as a whole, 2-11-2 squads here that are ruling the roost in the NFL. The Broncos are above the Patriots currently because of a tiebreaker, but what matters is that two teams with 11 wins are two teams that surprised us because we did not expect these two squads to be this good this quickly at this point of the season. For a lot of people, the Patriots would have been more of like a long shot this year with the potential of 2026. The Broncos, relatively speaking, were a playoff favorite. It looked a bit rough the first couple of weeks of the season. It looked like they had kind of lost some of the magic from last year. And while it still has definitely looked rough at times, they've won games and they win. So, Justin, before we address the question directly, Broncos and Patriots, what has been the calling card for both of these teams this season in terms of the recipe to success that has led these two teams to be relatively far and away? Like there's a 2-3 game gap between them and the third seed in the AFC. Like that's pretty big for this late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, they've already pretty much locked their divisions up. I mean, looking now, I know the Chiefs are officially eliminated from winning the division, not making the playoffs, but they can no longer win the division. The Chargers and Bills pretty much need to win out and get some help if they want to, have a shot at winning the division. It's a weird season for them because it's, again, a little bit ahead of schedule for where we expected these teams to be, especially the Patriots with a new coach. Not that, we didn't have a lot of respect for Vrabel to begin with. I always wanted him to be, any other team's coach. Like I liked him as a coach, but you got to go with, at least for the Broncos, for sure, it's defense. These teams were built right. They were built from the lines out. They have really good defenses, and they're well coached. Drake May is also balling out. I mean, that will always help. But, yeah, I mean, the calling card in my mind has to be solid defensive play, right?
Yeah, no, I think so. It's and both the rookie quarterbacks, or no, not rookies, excuse me, rookies last year, now second year QBs. Maybe early on is the closest thing we could call to a sophomore slump because both these teams started 1-2. Both of these teams are on 10-game winning streaks. That's something for the NFL statistic people to show. When was the last time that two teams in the same conference at the same time had a 10-game winning streak? Don't think that happens all that often. But to your point, Justin, I think for both squads, you have to look at the defensive side of things. You need to look at the fact that, for the Broncos, of course, on paper coming into the season, we knew Pat Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year, that was their guy. But I think what really shocked a lot of people is the fact of how lethal that pass rush became, right? And, it could always go both ways. A really great secondary can help your pass rush, and a really great pass rush can help your secondary. In this case, it's really gone hand in hand, especially because Pat Surtain ended up missing a couple weeks this season, so they were without their number one corner. Never an easy thing to look forward to. But this defense, the pass rush, the pressure, the run-stopping ability that the Broncos were able to put on consistently game in and game out throughout this win streak, and it's been the key part to a lot of their wins. There have been, of course, a couple moments here and there where maybe the defense weren't as clean cut as we were used to them being, but at the end of the day, it matters, can your defense make the most important plays of the game when it matters the most, and can your offense do enough? And that has been the prime thing for the Broncos this season. Arguably, kind of like you said, it's so close between these two teams, you'd maybe give the slight defensive edge to the Broncos, whereas if you look at the upside of the offense, you probably give that to the Patriots because what we've seen out of Drake May, because Bo Nix has been relatively good. He's had some moments where it's looked like him and Sean Payton, even in winning, there still needs to be something like there still is like a little something missing from there, right? Whereas with Drake May, I mean, the games this kid has had, like throughout this Patriots winning streak, there have been a couple where it's just like he only had to do the bare minimum. Like the first game of the Patriots win streak against the Carolina Panthers, which at that point in the season was really not that much to say. But then you look at certain games, like his 3 touchdowns against the Saints, his 3 touchdown near mistake free. It was 1 interception there against the Browns. But just like the high completion percentage, the kinds of throws that he's making, the flourishing of the rushing attack with the Patriots, I think, has been the biggest story, because the running back room was arguably the biggest question, for them going into the season. Because
it helps.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that they've had a rushing attack that has been able to have this second half of the season renaissance in particular has been big. A combination of Henderson, mainly him, truth be told, I think he's been their leading rusher for quite a few games now. So Travion Henderson coming into his rookie season, making an impact, has been the big story. So it's two teams that, like you said, both made this commitment to build from the trenches out, both with relative new head coaching hires. Of course, Mike Vrabel, this is his first year with the Patriots. Peyton was there a little bit beforehand. This is what, year 3 with the Broncos? Yeah.
No,
right?
I think it's 4 or 5 now, because he was there for 2 or 3 years with Russ, right?
Oh, Lord. Oh, yeah. That's unlimited. Well, I think he was there for the second Russell Wilson season, because who was the offensive coordinator you guys hired that the Broncos fired?
Hackett.
Yeah, because I think Hackett was
there the first year.
The first year. Peyton took over the second year, and
he was there for 2 years with Russ, so this is probably 4th year.
Yeah. So like two coaches that have been able to, one setting it up very quickly, clearly, but just things have gone well for both sides. Again, 2 10-game winning streaks happen. I almost wish they were going to face each other this week. Realistically, can we flip the schedule? But no, 2 great teams, 2 teams with really strong defenses, and 2 teams that have had rookie quarterbacks. Have some real stints of growth this year. Just base counting stats, it's relatively good, but like you look at the completion percentage and the poise of the likes of a Drake May, well over 70% on the season with his completion percentage, great touchdown interception rate. Bo Nix a little bit less so, like his overall completion percentage is down, but it's more so been like it. The Broncos have been a team where the second half has been their friend, especially on some of these wins in particular. They've had to use the second half of the game to either pull away properly or even make a comeback. They've had to do it on an occasion. And Bo Nix has been making the important throws late in the game when he's had to, which could go either way. So to the main question itself, Justin, and this is, we don't know what it is right now, because if we want to go based off of the current projected playoff picture we have at the moment, or just like a general statement of, if you had to pick one of these teams that have a few more flaws than the other going into the postseason this year, who do you think is more susceptible to a one-and-done playoff appearance this year?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because I don't want to bet against the defense, because I think the Broncos have a better defense. But I also think that the Patriots have a much better offense. And you're right, there is something like just slightly off about the Broncos offense, especially in a lot of those wins. That's why we see them win a lot of close games as opposed to, big statement blowout wins. Uh, so if I'm going to bet on one of these teams being one and done, I would say it's probably the Broncos because I just don't believe in Bo Nix to that point yet. But that being said, that's a tough question because I think could go either way. They're both really solid teams. And, obviously you never want to have the moment where one team is not going to show up. But it's funny because the safest pick and the toughest pick to make, because they both have the safest part of their team being the strongest part, and also like, the most wild card, part of their team is also the same team. So but I think it has to be Broncos just because of that offensive factor.
Yeah, it's really funny that like these two teams can kind of be the Spider-Man meme of this season, right? Like it's truthfully funny, especially when you consider like going into the season, we probably would have had a little bit more faith even in the Patriots secondary, just like we would have in the Broncos. Because like I mean, you've seen this more than I have, but like Christian Gonzalez and what he's able to do, man, like as the potential of not even potential, he's a number one corner in this league. He is the number one corner for this team. He's like when he's out there, when he's able to play, he's been
So
great.
when he's on the field,
Yeah, that's the thing. He does need to be healthy, but when he has been, it's been big. And like the coaching up that Vrabel has had to do for this, front four, front seven. Like, I mean, we kind of noted how like one big thing coming into this was like them bringing in Harold Landry, a guy that he knew from Tennessee. Like you get a guy or two extra in there that knows who the head coach is, that knows how this stuff goes. It kind of like I feel like one thing that kind of gets ignored sometimes is the human factor, right? And like the ability of Vrabel to like I think especially with his defensive players, like connect with them, understand what they have to do, understand those defensive schemes and packages, and just understand on a play-by-play basis like what you have to do to execute a good defensive play. Like he gets it, and I think like we were only ever complimentary from Tennessee, and I think we understood that ultimately in Tennessee, maybe a combination of factors happened, disagreements with management, most likely, of course, that definitely played a factor. Was the collective unit, not necessarily, I don't want to say player by player, but it was collectively in Tennessee, was the message not getting across anymore? And this has only benefited the Patriots entirely, right? Like it's been their biggest benefit. And then with the Broncos, kind of like you said, it's like Sean Payton, I think, is the best possible coach for them to have. But it's almost funny that this guy who we know is well thought of offensively, it's been a bit of a struggle here, and even parts of last season with Bo Nix as well. Still working out some of those growing pains that have to come with a young quarterback. Bo Nix has been impressive. He's been good. He's had his moments this year, but Drake May has just been so good. So I'm kind of lean towards it with you, and I also agree. It's by these like razor thin margins because you look at it. There's just that extra thing that's missing when it comes to the Broncos. Like if they just click, like there's that one thing missing that if they can just click, they would be, I think, even the bigger threat. And we it's always the conversation of is it a disadvantage sometimes for the first seed to not get to play in the first round, to completely miss a week? It could go either way. Rust versus rest, getting more guys back. It's a conversation either way. I'm not necessarily saying that is playing a role in my decision, because that is an oversimplification that we do not accept here in the program. But I would say, just on the same basis as you, I would give a very slight edge to the Patriots, just because I think like my mindset is fourth quarter, not even just like third quarter, fourth quarter, when you need the plays to be made. Drake May has been making them this season. He has been extremely impressive. Like earlier when we were consistently doing all gas, no breaks, which don't worry, people, we will bring that back for our returning viewers. We will bring that back here late in the season for a little version. And by the way, the next edition of it will be Justin's. But like I said earlier in one of our editions of like, I think he's going to be considered a top 10 quarterback by season's end. And Drake May is doing a phenomenal job at doing it. He's been playing winning football. He's been playing great football, and he has all the tools, to say the very least. So slight edge to the Patriots right now over the Broncos. But what were you saying, Justin? You were muted.
I said, yeah, but he's a Patriot jerk.
Yeah, I mean that's not a negative tax to me, like it probably would be for some. But yeah, things are going well in both these teams that, again, would not have expected 13 games in the top two teams to be the Broncos and the Patriots. What is this? 2012, 2013? We've
It
really
does feel
stepped back in
weird.
time. Right. Speaking of things being weird, Justin, in the preseason, we talked about, if the Bengals can be healthy and the Ravens, the AFC North was going to be a clash. Maybe the Steelers could have been sneaky. We talked about how, the West, again, it was looking like you have three strong playoff caliber teams, and the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers, and what those games were going to be like between those teams, going against each other. Even in the AFC East, well, I mean, not so much that. It was it was in theory an easy division for the Bills. Maybe someone could have challenged them for a brief stint before they took it. Turns out someone is very much challenging them, if not taking it from them. But Justin, of all the divisions we were talking about, it was rarely this one. We thought it was cut and dry. We thought it was going to be relatively easy, maybe a small challenge, but no. This division in the AFC has 3 teams with 8 wins or more. None of the other divisions have that at this point. So, Justin, is the AFC South the best division in the AFC? Or at least the most competitive. Maybe not the best necessarily in terms of merit, but best/most competitive in the division in the AFC. I don't think it's that close.
I got news for you. At one point this year, they had both the best offense and the best defense in their division in the league. Now, I will say the best offense has certainly fallen off, but the best defense is still there. And the Jaguars are kind of back to what we expected them to be for a while, consistent and getting some good play out of Trevor Lawrence. Not great play, but he's doing what it takes for them to win, and they finally look like they are a consistent, strong football team again. This is not your AFC South of 3 or 4 years ago. This is a good football conference now. They do have the Titans, but for the rest of it, it's a pretty good conference. Pretty good division.
Yeah, like to your point, and with the number one offense and defense, and that was from 2 different teams. At one point, the Colts were the number one offense in the NFL. At one point, the Texans were the number one defense, and like we were constantly talking about that for the Texans, right? Of like the offense needs to get back to a level, or like get to the level that we had seen from Stroud's rookie season and parts of his second year there, because that defense was playing like legitimately a playoff caliber defense, and we were worried that was very much going to be held out of the postseason because the offense wasn't holding up to stuff. And now the Texans are ahead of the Colts in the 7th seed tiebreaker right now based on head-to-head win percentage. The tribulations of being a really good team this season and being in that stacked AFC, because it is a tough playoff picture to digest, to say the least. But you look at what has become since then, and teams have definitely taken a step back, fallen off a little bit, but it's still like right now the Jaguars are ahead of the other two with a 9-4 record, so just 1 game above them. On a week-by-week basis, we can very much see the playoff picture change for these teams. So just I would say, like you said, like if we're just talking about depth, like every other division realistically, like it's mainly just been 2 teams. The AFC North technically has 3 teams still in it, but let's be honest, like the AFC North has very much been a disappointment this season, to say the least. Injuries playing a role, absolutely. Still disappointing. Like the Steelers could have ran away with this division at this point if they just actually understood what the word consistent meant. So,
well, unfortunately, injuries have derailed them too.
Yeah. So, sticking with the AFC South here, Justin, just looking at these 3 teams, the Jaguars, kind of like you said, relative consistency. They had a tough stretch in the middle of the season where they had lost 3 out of 4 games. One of those games to the Texans, by the way. So if the Texans and the Jaguars end up having a similar record at this point, the Texans will have the tiebreaker up to this juncture of the season. So the Jaguars definitely still need to do their job and win a couple of games here. But actually, they did beat the Texans earlier this season, so it's 1-1. So I'm not necessarily sure off the top of my head who had the division. But let's say if it's, you don't want to be tied with one of the teams. You want to be ahead of them. So if you're the Jags, you want to try to keep on winning here. If you're the Houston Texans, you very much rounded to the form. You started the season 0-3, got to 2-3, then lost a few more, and now you're on a 5-game winning streak. And again, you play who's in front of you. But to be fair to them, they came back and beat the Jaguars team that's ahead of them right now, which is a big win for this point of the season. They all intents and purposes, probably gave the Bills one of their worst games of the season. Maybe second, only because the Bills dropping that one game in Miami was just unforgivable, but gave them a tough time and are helping the narrative and the case that the Chiefs could miss the postseason this year. So that's what the Texans have done. And then the Colts, it's kind of been more of a 180 to those other two teams. Started out 7-1 with the small blip against the Rams, but they were looking great. Looked like they were going to bounce back after their overtime win against the Falcons to go back to 8-2, and now 3 straight losses for the Colts. And the big one being the fact that Daniel Jones, Danny Dollar Signs, as he was this season, well, he's unfortunately probably going to get a couple less dollar signs for himself in this offseason, Justin, because he tore his Achilles, right? Or was it his ACL? I think it was his Achilles for himself, which is absolutely brutal injury to suffer. Brutal way for the season to end. And brutal for the Colts because season-ending injury for him. Anthony Richardson orbital bone fracture because of training. How? Riley Leonard got a bit dinged up in their last game. So who'd they go to? Old man Riverwalk. Old man Phillip Rivers is coming back to the NFL this weekend, Justin. He is facing the Seahawks, and naturally the Seahawks are like a 2-touchdown favorite going into this game. So kind of like a slight follow-up to this question for this being the best division of the AFC. If you gut call here, Justin, gut instinct, whatever you want to call it, gut check. If you had to pick one of these 3 teams right now of who's going to end up winning the division, who are you leaning towards as the favorite at the moment? Muted. Justin, you're muted.
I gotta say, I still think it's going to end up being the Ravens.
No. We're talking about the South. We're talking about the South.
Right now. We're back to the South. I thought we're talking about the North now.
No, but I went back to the South, and we're staying with the South.
Oh, I lost track of everything.
You're good.
Well, then the Ravens probably aren't going to win.
No, probably not. I mean, even if we pull up them into the AFC South, I don't know if they would finish it off.
It's tough because the Jaguars should, in theory, hang on. They play the Jets this week. They have a chance to, take like a nice lead, but then they have a tough schedule. They got to play the Colts. They got to play the who was it? The Broncos. It's them going 2-2 in their next 4 games doesn't necessarily bode well for them, especially with Houston having an easier, time on the schedule. So I'm gonna say maybe Stroud getting healthy is at the right time, and they have a real shot of, locking this division up.
Right, and the Texans very much like that defense can still get back to that form. We've seen them do this now against Josh Allen, against Lamar, not Lamar. Well, they did do it to the Ravens earlier this season, but I don't think Lamar played in that game. I think that was the first game he missed of his injury streak. Doing it to Mahomes and the Chiefs, like this defense is playing at such a really good level. And if this Texans offense, if they could just get it together at the right time, like you said, if I do have to pick, like the Jaguars have been like talk about Bizarro this season. The Jaguars have been extremely weird this season with like the way with the way things have gone. Like they lost to the Bengals early in the season. Then they randomly ripped off a 3-game winning streak, beating San Francisco and Kansas City as a part of that early season win streak. Lost to the powers of the NFC West in Seattle and LA. It took them to overtime to beat a Raiders team that has just not been good this season. And then they randomly demolished the Chargers in a game. They beat the Titans handily, and they were able to very comfortably beat the Colts at home. It's such a weird season of like you've looked impressive in some of it. You have 9 wins. You've looked impressive in maybe 4 of them. like the other ones have just been like, how the heck did you win that game? And like some of their losses have just been like scratching. Like how the heck did you lose some of these? So the advantage is them right now. But like you said, the Texans. Look, shout out to Davis Mills. He did what he had to do with his stretch of starts. Like he legitimately, his 4-game stretch of starting for them. Well, I don't know if he came in to start the Broncos game. Maybe that was the game where Stroud got hurt. That was probably it. So his 3 straight games starting, coming in and getting those wins, playing good enough football, not making too many mistakes, just making smart calls, handling the offense properly. That 3-game win streak is the definitive difference maker for this Texans team this season and is likely going to be the difference between them getting into the postseason. Whether they win the division, which I'm kind of on your side, I give them a slight edge just because I think Stroud coming back, and if they can find just a little bit of that offense there, like just a spark here and there, it bodes a lot better for them compared to the Jaguars, who it's just been so up and down for them. Whereas even consistency-wise, the Texans defense has been extremely consistent this year, and I think they're going to continue to do that. Final note on the AFC South, Justin, the poor Indianapolis Colts. It looked like they had magic, 8-2 start. It was relatively fine with Daniel Jones. Jonathan Taylor looked like an MVP.
He looks like a fucking Hall of Famer.
Right? I think he should still be in the conversation, especially if he could pull out 1 or 2 games over the next couple to carry them to a win. But it's looking difficult right now. Talk about a Hall of Famer. They're a potential Hall of Famer is being brought back in to try to help him this late in the season with Phillip Rivers. It's not looking good. They paid the 2 first-round picks at the deadline for Sauce Gardner from the Jets, which those first-round picks, I mean, there's no lottery in the NFL, so it's not like you guys are going to randomly get the 4th overall pick at this point, like from the Colts, but it's looking like that. You know, I don't want to say necessarily regret because like you can't predict the future in terms of an injury to a starting quarterback who's playing well, but like what do you make of the call? I'm not saying is there, because obviously mathematically there is. What do you think are the realistic odds that they have of being able to claw back into the wild card hunt? Just, I don't know about the division. Maybe, I don't know if you want to go that far, but just wild card at minimum, because like you said, at last 4 games, like for the AFC South teams, you kind of mentioned it with Jacksonville, their hardest game is against Denver and then Indy, maybe Indy itself. The Texans relatively weaker on average the last 4. Indy's last 4 games are Seattle, San Francisco, Jacksonville, and the Texans. Ironically, the 2 AFC South teams ahead of them and 2 really good NFC teams right now. So what are the odds that Indy can miraculously sneak into the postseason here?
Yeah, looking at their schedule and seeing that the worst team that they play record-wise and over the last 4 games is the 8-5 Houston Texans. And then they play the 10-3 Seahawks, the fucking 8-5 the 9-4 Niners, and the 9-4 Jags. That's a gauntlet of an end of the year schedule.
Yeah.
It's really going to depend on their quarterback play, but honestly, there's only so much I think a guy like JT can do for you. They're going to stack the box. They're going to make your backup 40-year-old quarterback beat you. And, I mean, maybe there's a chance that there's some sort of semblance of Phillip Rivers left, but realistically, I think maybe we're just delaying the Hall of Fame case.
Right? Yeah, because now Phillip Rivers, with him coming back, and most likely going to retire again after this 4-game stretch. Wouldn't surprise me if he retires after the first 1 or 2. But, like, this now delays any chance of him getting in the Hall of Fame by, like, an extra couple of years, because what's the waiting period? 5 years or 4 years?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so, like, you know, Phillip Rivers will wait to potentially go into Canton one day, very, very, very into the deep, distant future. And yeah, like I feel so bad for Indy because it's like it was a magical season. It was looking great. Like, again, you want to talk about difference between now and the midpoint of the season. People were talking about, some of my coworkers at work were saying this. It's like, you look at the Colts, it's like you got a offensive player of the year candidate in Jonathan Taylor. A potential MVP candidate, of course, was up for him. Comeback player of the year for Daniel Jones. Coach of the year, Shane Steichen. Offensive rookie of the year at one point, right, for Tucker, the tight end. Like, all that's gone away. Taylor's probably, at best, will get the offensive player of the year award. But what could have been a much more fruitful legacy season for a Colts team that just, you want to talk about attrition. It's brutal for them, to say the very least. So that brings us to that. So as we continue this discussion of this 2025 season, let's talk about something we alluded to earlier here, Justin. You know, going into the season, if people were going to ask you favorites in the AFC, top quarterbacks in the NFL, just in general, like, no necessarily rankings, it's like, oh, the Ravens have to be up there. The Chiefs have been to the Super Bowl for 3 straight years in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is one of the few guys that you could argue has the ability to go throw for throw with him or show up in a game. Right now, it's not looking good. The Baltimore Ravens are 6-7. The Kansas City Chiefs are 6-7. They are the 9th and 10th seeds respectively in the AFC. It's not looking good. It's not looking great. And I don't think they'll be mathematically eliminated if they lose this weekend, either team, but the Chiefs are closer to that cavern than Ravens are, because the Ravens still have that outside shot. Just because the Steelers are like 7-6, they might lose to the Dolphins for all we know this upcoming week, because why not play down to your competition? It's not looking great. So the easiest thing to say is the injuries, and we've already kind of referenced that. But Justin, what has led to the Chiefs and Ravens, the two teams that we're talking about AFC Championship game preview for the last 3-4 years. Real possibility both of them miss out on the playoffs this year.
I will say, because of the head-to-head matchup and the way things have fallen, I think that if Houston wins and Kansas City loses, they are mathematically eliminated.
From the postseason as a whole. Oh, boy.
Yes, because they can't win the division anymore.
Right.
They're already knocked out of the division race. And Kansas City 6-7, while Houston is 8-5.
Wins, right.
So
and the Texans beat them.
9-5, and Houston, Kansas City is, 6-8. The best that Kansas City could be is 9-8, and they do not have the head-to-head tiebreaker with the current 7 seed.
Yeah,
Houston Texans.
And actually, if I'm not mistaken as well, they would also really need to go on a massive losing streak, but the Bills beat them earlier this year as well. So when Bills beat the Chiefs, I should say, specified.
And so did the Chargers.
Yeah. So
that's all 3 wild card teams.
Yeah. You want to talk about losing the worst possible games. The Chiefs lost them all this year, where in years past they would win it dang near all of
them. So the Chargers can knock them out.
Yep. Which is crazy to think about. Absolutely crazy to think about. This would be the first postseason with no Patrick Mahomes in it since he became a starter. That's something to say at the very least. So, leading in, once again, what has led to this, just complete dip in form from these two AFC powers from the start of this decade, you could say so far, to now being very much out of the postseason picture? One of them could be gone officially by the end of this weekend, and the other clinging to life.
Well, for Kansas City, it's been, the lack of offensive production. I think the defense has been stout, but there's only so long you could stay a top defense in this league before you start hemorrhaging players and pieces. And they held on to it for a long time, but the offense just could never get back to what it was when they were a powerhouse under Mahomes with Tyreek Hill and, the height of Travis Kelce. Now they're kind of just there. They're not a bad offense, but they certainly aren't a good one. The run game never panned out. Pacheco has not been healthy. The offensive line has always been patchwork. They got 1-year player here, 1-year player there, and they've made it work, but it's just not something that you can do for consistent production. So, they look a lot worse than what we usually expect them to look like. They're still winning games. They're probably going to be, an 8-win team this year. I'd be shocked if they weren't, but it's, it's not what we expect to see from the Chiefs. So that's definitely a big shocker. And now, especially now that they can get eliminated. Fortunately for the Ravens, they are in a much weaker division. The number 4 seed at 7-6 is the Steelers is the lead in that division, and they're only number 2 at 6-7. So they definitely have the opportunities to get back. Losing to the Steelers the other week did not help their position, but they do have a chance to actually still either make a wild card. I'm dying today. Make a wild card, or at the very least win their division. So they're not going to be eliminated yet. They do have a chance to be better, and they do have a chance to really, get this done. But realistically, it's got to be on Lamar. I mean, we can sit here and make excuses for the rest of the team. Their secondary has been awful. There was a fumbling problem. The run game wasn't what it was last year with Derrick Henry. But the last 4 or 5 games, Lamar has not looked good. You know what I mean? So we can say what we want about coaching and team construction and stuff like that, but their franchise quarterback and their 3-time MVP has to be better than this if they want to win games and they want to make playoffs.
I like you low-key giving Josh Allen's MVP to Lamar to make him a 3-time MVP there. I know you didn't do that on purpose. But no, you're right. The last 4 games for Lamar,
he's only got 2?
Only 2.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Ever since the Browns game, so starting from the Browns game, and since then it was the game against the Browns, it was the game against the Jets, and then the last 2 games, which have both been losses to the Bengals and the Steelers, only 1 passing touchdown in those 4 games, and 4 interceptions, and only 1 rushing touchdown as well. Hasn't even totaled. I'm trying to do some quick math here. Doesn't even have a total 100 rushing yards in the last 4 games, excuse me, as well. It's just been a tough thing to say at the very least. No, for both these teams, it's honestly funny. You could say that both these teams are in the position they're in. This is almost kind of like the opposite a similar but opposite version of, like, with the Patriots and the Broncos, were like two young quarterbacks who some growing pains, but they're both being, have had their moments, and the defenses are both really strong and really good. This is a case of, I think early in the season, a lot of people would have blamed the defenses for performances. Like, it is, I think it's fair to say, early in the season, the Kansas City Chiefs defense, like, they were getting, not necessarily, like, they weren't getting 40 points dropped on them like the Ravens were necessarily, but you had issues against in that Jacksonville game when your defense lets up multiple drives in the fourth quarter against the Jaguars. You have that midseason Bills game where they just absolutely could not, like, get stops when they needed to, when it mattered. The Chargers game to start the season, where the Chargers, it just felt like it ended as a close game, but that Chargers offense was just like looking like a game tape perspective, like the Chargers were just slicing up the Chiefs defense that night. Like Justin Herbert, it felt like he couldn't make a mistake with the reads he was making. And then as the season has continued, the defense has relatively started to play well. The Cowboys game is probably the biggest blip on the radar. But you look at it, only 20 points given up to the Colts, only 20 points given up to the likes of the Texans. They had that stretch in the middle of the season where they absolutely shut down the Lions, got a shutout win against the Raiders, and then only let up a single score to the Commanders, like doing what they were supposed to do. It looked like momentum was coming back. It looked like even for Mahomes, things were starting to come back well, but kind of similar. It's like Mahomes, after that midseason stretch where he was great, the last couple of weeks for it has just not been well. I mean, okay, 4 touchdowns against the Cowboys, that's not his fault, but it's 0 touchdowns and 1 interception against the Colts. Could find the back of the end zone a little bit more there. The worst game has to be the Texans game, right? 3 interceptions. I can't even think of the last time he had a 3 interception regular season game, even postseason. Although maybe probably the Eagles game. Did he throw 3 interceptions in the last Super Bowl? He may have, or at least 2. So because he threw the pick 6 against Cooper DeJean, and I think he threw an interception either just before or just after it as well. But irregardless, like it's kind of for both these teams. It's been at pockets. It was the defense that was kind of the issue, but it's kind of turned itself around to where it's like, well, in order for your defense to continue to play well, like to continue to round out into the better form, they need the offense to play well. And it's kind of like gone back and forth for the Chiefs. Now the defense has been playing well, but like one week Mahomes will show up and he will play great. The other game, it's just like they're not able to finish drives, and finishing drives is the most important thing. If the Podfather was here, he would talk about taking the points, but it's not even being about risk takers. It's just the fact they can't get that deep enough to be able to even do so. And with the Ravens, similar at the start of the season, Lamar got hurt early on in one of the games. I think it was the Kansas City game he got hurt in, if I'm not mistaken. Again, another one of those. Ironically, it was a stout defensive game for the Chiefs as a whole. But then from that point on, you had the couple games stretch there where the defense just looked like they were absolutely overmatched against competition after competition. Lamar comes back. They got a win just before he came back against the Bears, which is honestly odd to look back on considering what the Bears have become. But they get that win against the Bears after their bye week, and then they have a total of a 5-game winning streak. They get to 6-5, and you believe. People starting to believe it's like, you know what, this Ravens team, it's going to do what everyone's been saying. We talked about this on the show on multiple occasions. So are the Ravens going to make the postseason? Are they going to miss the postseason? We thought that the stretch was going to do them well, but then towards the end, it started looking a little bit off. Like we mentioned, Lamar, it's like, okay, didn't really do much against the Browns, but it was the Browns. It doesn't matter. Oh, didn't do that much against the Jets. Oh, but it's the Jets. They could get past that. Bengals whooped them on Thanksgiving. The Podfather picked that as, I think it was his cheeky 4-point upset pick, and that was smart. And I picked that as a 2-point upset for a reason. And then the game against the Steelers, a team that Lamar just weirdly, I shouldn't say weirdly, they always have a good defense, but like just struggles against, I feel, more than the other AFC North teams. Just can never really get, like, I don't think he's had like an all-world performance against the Steelers to memory. Maybe one of the games last year, but like he just struggles against that Steelers defense on a relatively consistent basis. And it was just another one. Only 1 touchdown and interception, just didn't look in any way, shape, or form good. And like you said, like I'm with you, Justin. The defense has started to kind of turn around back into form. Derrick Henry has had a better, back half of the season compared to what he was at the start when he was fumbling like every game, it felt like. That's not happening now. He's up north of 1,000 rushing yards again. He has 10 rushing touchdowns on the season. It has to be the MVP quarterbacks for both these teams that need to do it. Like the Chiefs will always have a good defense. Spagnuolo is going to coach them up. The Ravens have a great defense on paper. They've been playing relatively fine. The MVPs need to play like MVPs. It's kind of just straightforward like that. You need your best players to play like your best players. And if Mahomes is going to have another game where he'll pick up a lot of yards but no touchdowns, and if Lamar is going to have a game where it looks like he's barely doing anything, it doesn't spell well for both of these teams, truthfully. Like, mathematically, like you said, the Chiefs can get eliminated this week. And per your picks, you think it's going to happen. Conjunction between both our picks is I'm picking the Texans to win and you're picking the Chargers to beat the Chiefs, ironically. So we're both thinking it's going to happen, technically speaking, just based off our picks for the pick challenge. Like, if you're the Ravens, it's not looking good for them right now. It's not. So kind of final verdict, I think we've both already said a lot about the Chiefs in, like, this is literally every single week is the most important game of their season right now for going forward. And with the Ravens, they need to somehow overtake the Steelers. Quick, gut instinct. A lot of this is going to be gut instinct. Do both these teams make the postseason at the end of the day, Justin? Or actually, no. Let me rephrase the question. What do you think is more likely? Both of them make it or both of them miss it?
Both miss.
There we go.
Yeah, because I don't think both of them are making it. So I definitely think it's more likely that both miss it.
Yeah, because if we did have to bet, it's like you detailed, it's easier for the Ravens to make it.
Yeah, I think that the Ravens have a better chance. And I'm still on my thing that I think that they will make it. Lamar will figure it out and clean it up. But they just have so many more avenues where if for the Chiefs, A, they don't control their own destiny. And B, they can be shut down this week. Like, they have one avenue to get into the playoffs, and that is to win out and get help. And I just don't know that they do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And for both these teams, this is a critical week because I think, like, again, it's not going to be mathematic, but if the Bengals can beat the Ravens again, like, that necessarily doesn't mean that the Bengals are going to sneak in, because I think we're very close to a point. If the Bengals can win out, but I think if the Steelers just win 2 of their last few games, they'll have that edge over Cincy, which really just goes to show how brutal it was that they missed so much time with Burrow, and also the tough game against the Bills, which, what the heck was that? But there it is. So speaking of the Bengals, Justin, and we've spoken so much about them here on the show. I'm not necessarily focusing on their season here because I think we've talked about enough this season, but I'm sure you've seen the talking points. I'm sure you've seen the rumors and the reports and the fantasy scenarios and this, that, and the third, Justin. If they do miss out again, which is more likely when, so let's just say when the Bengals miss the postseason again this year for the 3rd year in a row, I think, right? Would it mark 3 straight years of missing the postseason?
I think so.
A conversation would need to be had of a team that went to back-to-back AFC championship games, won one of them, made it to a Super Bowl, were one play away from winning a Super Bowl. Is Joe Burrow long for Cincinnati if this team, once again, was inept as being kind with him missing time there? Like, just useless without him. Joe Flacco won, I think, a single game, and that's about it. So, literally a single game.
They lost to the Jets with Joe Flacco, so yeah.
When they were like,
to be fair, that wasn't an offensive problem.
They had, well, you know what I mean. Like, I'm signifying like Joe Flacco only won one game there, but like as a collection as a whole, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
People are throwing out the scenario, Justin. If the Bengals miss the postseason this year, when they miss it, what are the odds? Would you even entertain a possibility of Joe Burrow being traded this offseason? Essentially, is what I'm.
If I'm Bengals, no. No, there's no way. There's no answer in replacing it. There's nothing you can get back that you can guarantee replaces Joe Burrow. You just can't. What you have to do is you have to clean house, and you have to bring in people that understand football and understand the right way to build a team. Honestly, go out and get a guy like freaking Joe Douglas. The one thing he couldn't get was the quarterback. Give him a quarterback already on your team and let him build like an actual team around it, because he built a really good team for the Jets. He just couldn't get the quarterback right. Now you can have him actually build a team around a quarterback that already exists. They'll be a really good franchise. And it would just be so jet-like to have him go somewhere else and win a Super Bowl. But yeah, it's just clean up your stupid ass roster. It's so bad. Like you have the receivers signed. There's no run game. There's no offensive line. The offensive scheming sucks. There's no secondary. Your pass rush is okay because you have Hendricks there, but he's on a 1-year deal. He's probably not going to come back. Like there's just so many question marks on your roster that shouldn't exist when you have a quarterback like Joe Burrow. I mean, this kid is contemplating retirement. Did you see that recent interview?
Yeah, that basically like he's only going to play football as long as he has fun with it. Basically,
he's gonna Barry Sanders his way out of this team because
or Andrew Luck, when you consider the injuries.
They're draining the fun out of this because they're not winning. Winning would solve all of this. They are not winning.
Yeah, I agree. When you like,
it's not like Andrew Luck. They squeezed the fun out of it, but like they were at least consistently good. They were in the playoffs, etc. They're not even winning games now.
Right. It's sad. It's genuinely sad when you consider it. And like this is a guy in Burrow. This is a Hall of Fame talent quarterback. Like this is a quarterback that I will continue to say this, and I don't care if people disagree. I truly don't. I think he is, for mechanics, for processing, for the intricacies of being a quarterback, I think he is the second best quarterback in the league behind Mahomes. I still hold that. This is the level of talent that he is.
He's that good. He's just...
And this team has failed at so many turns. And like you said, I don't think in any realistic scenario that they'll consider trading him this offseason. The only way that could happen is if this offseason he pulls, like you talked about Barry Sanders or Andrew Lucking. What about Carson Palmering his way out is the next thing that everyone is going to, of him just threatening to retire. Yeah. And then he ends up getting traded and then unretires and whatever. That, I don't know. Like, it's a nice fantasy to imagine that he would get traded. I just don't think it's happening. I also don't think that's in his character. I think Burrow has like he's an Ohio kid, right? Like I just don't see him doing that. I don't think he would want to go out in that kind of way with this team, no matter what the failings have been. So
go to Cleveland.
Right? Oh man.
Honestly, imagine a quarterback with that defense.
I mean, we can make that like you said. It's funny because Joe Douglas, actually, I had to look it up because I'm like, where the heck is Joe Douglas? He is currently a senior personnel director and advisor to the
back with Philly.
Yeah, with Philly. So, like realistically, if you're the Bengals, why wouldn't you hire a guy like you said? Like he was the general manager for your team.
It makes sense.
He made a lot of good selections, and just the one thing that he was unable to get was the quarterback. And like if you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, you know what's funny is that like they don't even technically have like a full-time, like they don't have someone labeled as a general manager. It's just Duke Tobin, who's director of player personnel, and he's just the de facto GM because remember, the Bengals ownership is cheap. They don't like paying people more money. So they essentially have Tobin do two different jobs, probably more than two if we're being honest, but for the pay of one. So it's an odd thing to see that there's an NFL decision maker that understands what it's like to be like an office worker, basically. But that is yeah. I mean, it is sad, 100%. But that's just what it is. Is it going to happen this year? Probably not. But would it be fun to imagine? Yes. That being said, I think we're closer. Would you say we're closer to a Joe Burrow early retirement rather than a trade?
I don't know.
I mean, I know you don't want to consider one or the other.
I don't know a guy in that way to like tell you which direction I think he'll go. I'd like to think it's going to be a trade because football is better with Joe Burrow in it.
Yes,
but I don't have an answer for you.
That's fine. But yeah, that's just, we have to bring that up. Just these three teams that a lot of people had a lot of faith in going into the season, all are out of it. So that was the AFC side of things, Justin. Let's run to the NFC side of things, and let's start with the defending Super Bowl champions, who currently find themselves overall in the NFC standings third, and they'd be a lot lower if it wasn't a wild card picture, if it was a different playoff picture to the way it is. But the 8-5 Philadelphia Eagles, at one point they were 8-2, and they were looking fine. They were the season started with a lot of close and ugly wins. They were starting to get a couple more wins where they looked more like they were handling things. For a brief moment, it looked like the Eagles of last year were coming back, and then everything went down. 3-game losing streak, including, I think the 3 losses are to the this might be the wrong order of games played, but the Cowboys, Chargers, and Bears, I think, is the 3 losses that they've had in a row here. And it's not looking like last year, but this is looking similar to a recent Philly season. Justin, are the Eagles headed for a repeat of the 2023 campaign, which for those that might be forgetting off the top of their head, don't worry, I'm here to provide you the context for the Philadelphia Eagles and what happened to them in 2023. So that was the year after they made it to the Super Bowl and lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. That Eagles team started 10-1, but then they lost 3 games in a row, 5 of the last 6 in the regular season, and then lost in a early playoff matchup in the wild card round to the Baker Mayfield-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers, funny enough. So I think that was Baker's first year in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we expected him to be horrible.
Yeah. So that was the Eagles' 2023 season. And I got to say, it's not looking great. And for the record, just for the context of the losses they had late in that season, they had a 3-game losing streak after the good start. They lost to San Francisco, Dallas, and Seattle. So they lost to some pretty noteworthy NFL teams in that stretch of time as well in 2033. And they just lost to 3 teams that 2 of them are in the playoff picture right now. One of them is a division rival. One of them is Dallas. Oh, no. Oh, no. It's looking like a repeat. So, Justin, are the Eagles headed towards a repeat of that 2023 season? I'm not necessarily like they still made the postseason that year. The Eagles are still have a decent shot to make the postseason this year because they have a couple game edge over the Cowboys, which we'll get to here in another moment. But what do you make of the current landslide for them, and what do they have to do to stop it?
Well, I guess let's look at their schedule because I think seeding is going to be important to them. Like you said, you are the 3 seed. The higher you are, the better off you're looking. Although, I'll be honest, I don't know if I might rather play. The NFC is going to be tough no matter what matchup you have. I mean, right now, they're going to play the 49ers, which is another NFC rematch. Realistically, they should probably win out. The only game on their schedule that I might be a little worried about is that Bills game. But
and it is worth noting real quick that they did beat the Packers earlier this season. So if them in Green Bay, I mean, I can't even say if they'll tie record-wise because, ironically enough, the Packers have a tie. And that kind of gives them a slight bump in the schedule here at the end of the day. So it's going to take a lot for them to have to leap over Green Bay to get the 2nd seed back.
Yeah, I don't know. That being said, though, if they could just get, back to where they were, I think, like in terms of offensive production, I think they'll be all right. I mean, realistically, they're a team that should probably be atop the NFC, like they have been in the past few years. And so now it's just kind of like, how long does it take before they figure it out, or do they never end up figuring it out?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And
That's really what it is.
no, I agree.
Are they going to get that offense together, and are they going to figure it out, or are they going to be just kind of stuck in this perpetual disappointment?
Yep. Which they tend to then get back to the Super Bowl every once in a while. When it comes to the Eagles, one guy who's taken a lot of flack is Jalen Hurts here in recent weeks for the level of play or lack thereof breaking through for bigger games here that we have seen him do in theory in years past in like the last 2 postseason runs. What do you make of the recent criticism on Hurts before we move on here to the next point? And do you, not necessarily, I know we don't hold him to necessarily, like he's not in the tier of quarterback of Lamar, of Mahomes, or Burrow, or Allen, but do you think it kind of needs to fall on his shoulders right now to stop this losing streak? That whether it's he needs to take it upon himself, use his legs more, or even more, I should say, and then the need for him to get his connection back with his top guys. I mean, I think him and Devontae Smith is fine. It's just like the AJ Brown thing has just been the weirdest thing this entire year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he hasn't been open or but he's just not all of a sudden that guy, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with him. It is a weird situation. I mean, especially because like there's some games where he just looks so good. And then there's some games where he just does it not there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, granted, AJ Brown has been starting to come back a bit more. He has 3 straight 100 receiving yard games. So maybe they're starting to click back here at the right time, potentially. But it's unfortunately been with 3 losing efforts as well. So there's something there. And also, the Saquon thing is a bit odd this season. From over 2,000 yards, he's going to finish with over 1,000, but his volume and what they've done with him this season nowhere near compared to what they did last year, where 345 carries compared to he's probably going to hit 300 to end this season off, but it's been a different way the offense has gone about things in Philly this season. So from this point about the Eagles to the next point, Justin, can the Dallas Cowboys surprise us all in what was not a smooth season? Turbulent offseason, trading away the best defensive player on the team. Now in a situation where they're winning a couple more of their recent games. They just lost against Detroit, but they had a 3-game winning streak before that. They are 6-1. They are currently the 10th seed in the NFC, above the Vikings, who they're facing this week. Probably with the chance to eliminate Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, fair chance that they will. So, do you think the Cowboys can sneak into the postseason?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes, and not because they deserve it, but because they got lucky and they got a tie.
Yeah, that tie can help them. It very much can.
Very much can. It's a huge difference. It really does make a huge difference in the seeding. So, yes, I do think they can. I think that they have the offensive firepower and all of a sudden the defensive tools to make something happen as well. But realistically, I think I'm going to chalk it up to that tie.
Yeah. And their last 4 games is against the Vikings, the Chargers, the Commanders, and the Giants. The Commanders have kind of been like a touch and go this season, right? They've had some really good games. They've surprised people with some of the performances they've had, but then they've also had some really stinker games, like the upset early in the season against the Giants, just absolutely getting roughshotted by the Jaguars out of nowhere. That was maybe just like the statement game for Jacksonville, and also a what the heck is happening here game for the Chargers. So, like, they could potentially beat them. They win out. They go 10-6-1. You're going to need some of the teams above you to lose here a little bit, such as the Chicago Bears, the Niners, Bears, and the Lions. Like, that's the 6 through 8. It's a bit tough to crack into that, but I mean, if that offense keeps playing at a really good level and the defense just is good enough, do you want to? Just last thing, Justin, because like this guy has definitely been maligned a little bit here on the podcast. I haven't been on his case so much recently as I maybe was in the past, but I know Rick, of course, Rick's favorite NFC quarterback, Dak Prescott. Do you want to tell the people why Dak Prescott is such a darn good quarterback here, Justin? Because he really has been like, you look at the performances he's had, like in their wins, he had 4 touchdowns, no mistakes really against the Raiders, 2 touchdowns, played big time against the Eagles, and then 2 touchdowns, just like steady plays and helped close out the game against the Chiefs. Like, you want to wax slightly poetic here about Dak Prescott before we move on?
He's an excellent quarterback. His issue has always been consistency. So when he's got his healthy complement of receivers and weapons, he's really good. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have 2 receivers that are the caliber of George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
They finally have that run game humming again since, the first time Zeke left. It has not been the same, and all of a sudden Javonte has been excellent for them. There's just, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons as why they shouldn't be this good, but realistically, they've been pretty good because Dak Prescott's been pretty consistent.
Yep. 100%. And CeeDee Lamb, like, he missed some time this season, but he's come back. He's done relatively well. George Pickens, like, stepped up in that absence when he had to. That's an offense that's looking pretty good right now. Like, you got to give them slight credit. Like, they're bouncing back here late in the season, and they're picking up some big wins when they have to. So there's that. So speaking of which, this is a focus on one of the teams. I mean, we could sort of bring in another team in this one. Do you think the Lions, Justin, are going to get back into the postseason properly here to end off the season? It was it was a little tough throughout the start of the season, right? They had that early tough loss against Green Bay. There was another early season loss that kind of like highlighted their schedule here relatively, but then they beat the likes of the Ravens. They destroyed the Chicago Bears earlier in the season when they met up, and that's going to play a role here in a couple of moments in the conversation. Oh yeah, that tough loss against Kansas City was the one that stopped their early season start, and they've alternated. They have not been able to put together a 2-game win streak since weeks 4 and 5. It's been going back and forth ever since. So now you have a situation. They just beat Dallas. They're gonna face the LA Rams here. That's I mean, if records were different, that's almost like an NFC Championship game preview. In this case, it's a you need to get this win to help out your playoff odds thing, because Bears are 9-4, Niners are 9-4, Lions are the AFC the 8-5. They would miss the postseason as of today, and that's kind of been where they've occupied most of the last couple of weeks. Do you think they'll be able to, the talks of their window being closed so suddenly, do you think they can reopen that window and at least get back into the postseason?
Yes, I do think they're good enough, but unfortunately, they're gonna need some help now. They don't really control their own destiny, right? I mean, they have to let's see, if they beat the Bears in week 18.
They would need the Bears to lose here a little bit.
Would the Bears still have the tiebreaker?
Well, the Lions beat them earlier this season.
So they wouldn't. So all they need to do is take care of business here.
Yeah.
They control their own destiny. And it's hard to bet against a team that's as good as we think they are, that also controls their own destiny this late in the season. We thought they'd be better than they are right now. Like I said, it's been a topsy-turvy season. But I do think as they control their own destiny, I think it's a pretty safe bet that they're probably going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's so many avenues for them to make it.
Yeah, and realistically, like when you look at the Bears situation, it's like it's funny how somewhat similar. They're both facing a really good NFC West team. The Lions are facing the Rams this week. The Bears are facing the Niners in week 17. They're both facing an AFC North team. The Bears facing the Browns this week. The Lions get the Steelers next week in Detroit. And then it's the 2 games on the road to end the season for Detroit are against Minnesota, which is a big one that they can't mess that one up because they lost to the Vikings earlier this season, which that's probably the biggest game of like, how did you let that happen to you kind of deal. And then, of course, that season finale. They just need the Bears to lose one extra time to them, which I think can very much happen. This is, let's give a shout out to the Bears real quick, Justin. Ben Johnson's very much looking like he transitioned to being a head coach really well. Caleb Williams has shown improvements this season, not at the level of being the number 1 overall pick yet, but still a pretty good sophomore year when you look at what his first year was like. That team has showed spark. That team has showed in moments that they can play really good, but ultimately they just need to lose one extra game, which I think they could. Truthfully, I think this game against Cleveland almost feels like slightly trap game. So there's that.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah, like Cleveland just had their own disappointing loss now against the Titans, and now you just need that Browns defense could turn around. Myles Garrett on the precipice of making some real NFL history here. That dude's been an absolute beast. Probably going to end up being the defensive player of the year. It's going to be interesting to say the very least. So that first loss that you need to go your way could happen. If you can just eke out a win against the Rams here, makes it interesting. And I'm sure the Niners would love it. The Niners and the Seahawks would absolutely adore the Lions if they could beat the Rams here, because that would help out their own case in the postseason picture. But we're not talking about the NFC West to finish off the discussion here. We're talking about one last thing. And Justin, we were maligned in 2023 for one of the, at the time, boneheaded predictions to ever be made, thinking that the 2023 Carolina Panthers had a chance to win anything more than 1 or 2 games. But you know what, Justin? I always like to say, sometimes on this podcast, we're not wrong. We're just early. Have we been right this entire time? Were we just ahead of the curve? Were we visionaries a la Seth Rollins? And we jumped the gun a little bit, but we saw that there was something there. We saw the potential of a running game. We saw what Bryce Young could do if he wasn't being on his back every other play. We saw what could have happened if you give him a decent receiver. It turns out it was Ted McMillan, a guy who hadn't even been in the NFL at that point in 2023. But no,
all we needed.
Yes, in all seriousness, the Carolina Panthers are 7-6. They currently lead their division of all things. You would have expected that. They earlier in the season, well, actually, they haven't even faced Tampa yet. So they faced Tampa 2 of the last 4 games. Real chance that the division is going to be on the line by then. They faced the Saints in New Orleans this week, who they lost to. So that's what I was thinking of. They lost to the Saints earlier in the season in Carolina. So they have to have a revenge game here against them. And they faced Seattle in week 17 before it. So basically, Justin, were we right? Were the people wrong? Was the Podfather wrong to make fun of us? Are the Carolina Panthers going to sneak into the postseason and likely get the absolutely mopped up in the first round of the postseason in the wild card round?
I can see it.
Indeed. Oh, no.
That's a big step for them, though. They haven't been relevant in 5-10 years. For them to make the playoffs right now, in this part of Bryce Young's young career, there's a lot of positivity for that, especially from what we thought that this team was going to be and what they have been the last few years. So, yeah, I would take that as a huge win.
Yeah, and Bryce Young, obviously there's still mistakes, there's still some tough games, but he is playing better this season. He's on pace. It's a little tough. He's still getting relatively sacked here and there, but it's not as atrocious as it was maybe in points of last season. Early in the season, let's not forget this. Early in the season, people were talking about, is the Bryce Young experiment over? Is this just a stay of execution? Is he going to be traded by the Carolina Panthers in this upcoming offseason? But they have turned that around, and they have a chance to win their division, which is absolutely crazy to think about, all things considered. From a 0-2 and 1-3 start to being 7-6. This Panthers team they're doing something here. Bang the drum in Carolina, because the Panthers are here and they've clawed their way back into the division. Huh?
I love it.
Thank you. But no. So that concludes the 8 main talking points that we had to answer the question of what is this 2025 season, and the answer is in the name. It's chaos, and we love chaos here on the program, right, Justin?
Oh, we love chaos.
So those were our main 8 talking points. Before we honestly close things out here, Justin, because unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, of course, no Podfather, there's going to be no Rand Podium here, no surprise Rand Podium, no surprise video here to finish things off. None of that. He really took the day off, like Justin said. He's winging it. Dude thinks it's time to just be lazy here in the holiday season. He's probably eating milk and cookies somewhere. I'm kidding. I don't think I think milk and cookies is too basic of a combination for him that he would enjoy it.
No, he'd have to find some way to be like Mountain Dew flavored cookies and Cheeto milk.
What? Cheeto milk. Baja Blast cookies.
Oh, yeah.
God. Well, I mean, if we're being honest, that probably is a recipe somewhere that you could figure out to make. But see, here's the thing: we make that joke, but the Podfather wouldn't. He's not going to put in the work to make the Baja Blast cookies. He would want them to be already created so that he could try them and
that's true.
So we're in fairness to him. But no, as we reach the end of this episode here, Justin, the zenith of this return episode for us, coming back from the Thanksgiving food coma that we finally were able to overcome ourselves from. Any last words about this 2025 season, Justin, and just baseline? What are you expecting to end in these last couple of weeks of the regular season? 4 regular season weeks left. What are we going to see here? Or should we just tell people to expect the unexpected? Because that's kind of what this.
Honestly, I was going to say chaos. I don't know what to expect, and my predictions have been garbage. So I don't want to promise anything to anyone.
Right. Like truthfully right now, the way the playoff picture is, I think in both conferences, you can see multiple teams drop out of the playoffs, from what it is now to even next week, potentially, next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, the end of the season. It's going to be a crazy stretch run to the end of the regular season into the postseason to start 2026. And that's all we ask for. We want it to be a fun end to the season where every game matters. And it feels like for a good amount of teams, every game matters, Justin. And that's all you can ask for this late in the season.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, thank you so much for joining us on this week's return edition of the Sports Ages of Chaos podcast. Don't worry, we're not going to take a 2-week break on this next time around. At least we don't We don't think so. We don't think so. There's no food coma, maybe a sleep coma for us, but there's no food coma that's going to be hitting us anytime soon here. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of a podcast filled with fun, football, and chaos. We reviewed what has been a crazy 2025. I'm skipping pronunciations here. Well, it's been a crazy 2025 season so far. We've previewed what's happened, or we've reviewed what's happened, and a little bit of a preview / expectation of what we think is to come here in the last 4 weeks. Playoff races are still to be decided. No division I don't think any division has been clinched to this point. And I think even playoff spots are still on the line very much.
I think a lot of that can change this week.
Very much so. But let's work with me here, Justin. 48 hours from now, we will see a couple more things clinched, but enjoy what is most likely the last day of this NFL regular season where no playoff spots are clinched, because that's going to change. And then so much more is on the line this week, next week, and in the couple weeks to follow. A chaotic end to this 2025 season is upon us, and we are here to enjoy it and talk about it with all of you and share our thoughts as always. But once again, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, and we will see all of you beautiful, beautiful people next time here on the program. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the weekend.